The Arizona Territory sun beat down mercilessly on Clara Whitmore's blistered feet as she stumbled into the trading post, her wedding dress torn and caked with red dust. 3 days. 3 days since she'd fled her father's ranch and the monster he'd promised her to. A cattle baron twice her age with a reputation for burying wives. The gold band her mother left her was the only thing of value she had left, clutched so tightly in her palm that it had left an imprint in her skin. "Water," she rasped to the trader, a grizzled man who looked at her with more calculation than compassion. "Please, I can pay." She held out the ring with a trembling hand, her vision swimming from dehydration and exhaustion. Before we continue with Clara's journey, I'd love to ask you a small favor. If you're enjoying this story, please take a moment to subscribe to the From Wild West channel and give this video a like. It truly means everything to us and motivates us to bring you more quality content like this. Your support helps keep these stories alive. Now, let's get back to Clara. The trader reached for the ring, but a shadow fell across the counter. Clara looked up, and up at the man who'd just entered. He was tall, powerfully built, with copper skin weathered by years under the desert sun. His black hair, streaked with silver at the temples, was tied back with leather cord. He wore simple buckskin pants and a faded shirt, but there was something commanding in his bearing, something that made the trader's hand freeze mid-reach. "The lady needs water, not commerce," the man said, his voice deep and steady as bedrock. His dark eyes, nearly black, ancient and knowing, fixed on Clara with an intensity that should have frightened her, but somehow didn't. "How much for a canteen and food enough for 3 days?" "For you, Neshoba, $2, the trader said quickly, his tone shifting to respect. The Apache man, Neshoba, placed coins on the counter without breaking eye contact with Clara. "Keep your ring. Ishkene. Gold isn't what sustains life in this desert. Water is, food is, shelter is." He picked up the supplies and gestured toward the door. "You're running from something. The question is whether you're running toward death or survival." Clara's throat was too dry to answer, but she followed him outside where 2 horses waited, a paint stallion and a smaller dun mare. He handed her the canteen, and she drank desperately, water spilling down her chin. "Slowly," he cautioned, his large hand steadying hers. "You'll make yourself sick." When she could finally breathe again, she met his gaze. "Why are you helping me?" "Because the desert has already chosen whether you'll die today. I'm simply offering you a different path." He studied her torn dress, her bleeding feet. "You need a place to heal. I have land, 15 miles north. A ranch, small but sufficient. I need help with harvest and preparing for winter. You need time to decide your next move. We can help each other." "I don't know you," Clara whispered, though even as she said it, she recognized the absurdity. She didn't know anyone in this territory, and the devil she'd fled was worse than any stranger could be. "My name is Neshoba Yazi. I'm 42 years old. I've lived on my land for 10 years, raising horses and cattle. I fought in the Indian Wars, but I fight no more. I trade fairly with whites, Mexicans, and my own people. I've been married once. She died of fever 7 winters ago." His eyes held hers with absolute directness. "I'm offering you honest work and safety, nothing more. What you do with that offering is your choice." Clara looked down at her mother's ring, then back at this strange, solemn man who spoke with a formality that somehow conveyed more respect than any flowery words could. My name is Clara Whitmore. I'm 24. I'm running from a marriage I didn't choose, and I have nowhere else to go." "Then you're no longer running. You're riding." He swung onto his stallion with practiced ease, then offered his hand. "Can you ride?" "Not well." "You'll learn. The desert teaches or it kills. I prefer to teach." He pulled her up behind him when she hesitated too long at the mare. "Hold on to me. Don't be afraid. I'm too old and too tired for anything but honesty." Clara wrapped her arms around his waist, feeling the solid strength of him, the steady rhythm of his breathing. As they rode north into the vast emptiness of scrubland and distant purple mountains, she felt the terror of the past 3 days begin to crack, making room for something she hadn't felt in years, the possibility of hope. Neshoba's ranch sat in a valley cradled by rust-colored cliffs, where a spring-fed creek cut through the property like a silver thread. The house was adobe, well-maintained, with a covered porch and corrals that held a dozen horses of various colors. As the sun set, painting the sky in shades of crimson and gold, Clara thought it was the most beautiful place she'd ever seen. "You'll sleep in the house," Neshoba said, dismounting and helping her down. Her legs nearly buckled. "I have a cot in the barn for now. Tomorrow, we'll establish the terms of your stay." "Wait," Clara said as he turned away. "You said you're too old and tired for anything but honesty, but you haven't told me what you want in return." He paused, his profile sharp against the dying light. "I want someone who sees this land the way I do. Someone who'll help me protect it, tend it, make it flourish. I want meals cooked and clothes mended, and a voice in the evening that isn't my own. I want to teach someone the ways of survival here, and I want them to stay because they choose to, not because they're trapped." He finally looked at her. "I want partnership, Ishkane, but I won't ask for it until you're healed enough to offer it freely." "What does that word mean? The one you keep calling me?" A ghost of a smile touched his weathered face. "Woman, but not in the way you might think. It means the one who completes the circle. My people believe balance requires both the masculine and feminine. You are Ishkane, necessary, powerful, essential, not property, never property." Clara felt tears prick her eyes for the first time since she'd fled. "Thank you," she whispered. "Come, you need food and rest. Tomorrow, your real education begins." The first week was harder than any work Clara had ever done. Neshoba woke her before dawn, and they worked until dusk, feeding horses, mending fences, hauling water, harvesting the late summer vegetables from his garden. Her hands blistered and her muscles screamed, but he never pushed her beyond what she could endure. "Pain is the body's language," he told her, as he wrapped her palms with cloth soaked in yarrow tea. "Listen to it, but don't let it rule you. The difference between suffering and strength is whether you surrender or adapt." He taught her to ride properly, sitting on the mare, whom Clara named Sage for her gray-green coat, with correct posture and quiet hands. He taught her to read the sky for weather, to track game by their prints, to distinguish edible plants from poisonous ones. "The desert seems empty to those who don't know its language," he said one evening as they watched the sunset from the porch. "But it's full of life, full of medicine, full of stories. You just have to learn to see." Clara found herself watching him when he thought she wasn't looking. The way his hands moved with such confidence and precision, whether he was gentling a nervous colt or skinning a rabbit. There was a grace to his movements, an economy of motion that came from decades of practice. And despite his earlier claim of being old, she saw the strength in his arms, the power in his shoulders. She also saw the loneliness in his eyes when he thought no one was watching, the way he sometimes looked at the sunset with an expression of such profound solitude that it made her chest ache. One night, 2 weeks into her stay, a storm rolled in from the mountains, the kind of violent, thrashing monsoon that turned the desert into a temporary sea. Rain pounded the adobe walls, and thunder shook the earth. Clara had never been afraid of storms before, but this one felt apocalyptic, as if the sky itself was tearing apart. A crack of lightning struck so close that the horses screamed in their corral. Without thinking, Clara ran outside into the deluge, desperate to calm them before they broke through the fence and scattered into the night. "Clara, no!" Nashoba's voice cut through the storm. But she was already at the corral, speaking softly to the panicked animals, her hands on their necks. Then she saw it. One of the fence posts had split, and the wire was tangling around the legs of his prized paint stallion. The horse was thrashing, about to break his own leg. She didn't hesitate. She ducked under the railing and grabbed the wire, trying to free it even as the stallion reared above her. Strong arms seized her waist and hauled her backward, just as hooves crashed down where she'd been standing. Nashoba held her against his chest with one arm, while his other hand moved in swift, sure motions, speaking to the horse in his native tongue, calming it with sounds that seemed to cut through the storm's chaos. Within moments, the stallion stilled enough for him to unwrap the wire and lead it to safety. Only then did he turn to Clara, rain streaming down both their faces. "Are you hurt?" "No, I'm sorry, I just wanted to help." "You could have died." His hands gripped her shoulders, and for the first time since she'd met him, she saw real anger in his eyes. "That horse could have crushed your skull. Do you understand?" "Yes, but I couldn't just—" "You could have." His voice was hard now, edged with something that sounded like fear. "You could have waited for me. You could have valued your own life above an animal's, but you didn't. And now—" He stopped, his jaw working. "Now what?" Clara challenged, her own fear transmuting into defiance. "Now you regret bringing me here. Now you're angry that I'm not the helpless thing you expected?" "Now I'm terrified," he said quietly, and the raw honesty in those 3 words stole her breath. "Because I've spent 10 years not caring whether I lived or died, and in 2 weeks, you've made me remember what it feels like to want to protect something. And I'm angry, Ishkene, because I don't want to feel this again. I can't." The rain was cold, but the space between them felt charged with heat. Clara reached up, her hand trembling, and touched his face, the first time she'd initiated contact. "I'm terrified too," she whispered, "because the man I was running from took everything from me without asking. And you've given everything without demanding, and I don't know what to do with that." His hand came up to cover hers, pressing her palm against his cheek. "You don't have to do anything with it, not until you're ready. I told you, I won't ask for what you can't freely give. And what if I want to give it?" The words escaped before she could stop them, born from the adrenaline of the storm and the nearness of death, and the way he was looking at her like she was something precious and terrifying all at once. "Then you'll tell me," he said, his thumb stroking across her knuckles. "With words, Clara. Clear words. Because I need to hear them. I need to know you're choosing this, not surrendering to it." She nodded, and he finally led her back inside, both of them drenched and shaking. He built up the fire, while she changed into dry clothes in the bedroom. And when she emerged, he'd hung a blanket to divide the room, giving her privacy while still staying close enough to ensure the fire kept burning through the night. But Clara couldn't sleep. She lay on the bed, listening to his breathing on the other side of the blanket, and realized with startling clarity that for the first time in her life, she felt safe. Not because someone owned her or controlled her, but because someone had given her the space to become who she was meant to be. The next morning dawned clear and bright. The storm washed away as if it had never been. Neshoba was already up, checking the damage to the corral. Clara made coffee and breakfast, and they ate in companionable silence until he finally spoke. "I need to teach you to shoot." Clara looked up, startled. "Why?" "Because the world isn't safe, and I won't always be here to stand between you and danger. Because a woman alone in this territory needs to be able to protect herself. And because," he hesitated, "because you deserve the right to defend your own life." So, that afternoon, he took her to a clearing beyond the creek, where he'd set up targets, bottles, tin cans, pieces of wood. He showed her how to load his rifle, how to hold it against her shoulder, how to breathe and aim and squeeze rather than pull the trigger. "Don't fight the recoil," he instructed, standing behind her with his hands steadying her arms. "Expect it. Become part of it. The gun isn't your enemy. It's an extension of your will." The first shot went wide. The second shattered a bottle. By the 10th, Clara was hitting targets with increasing accuracy. The kick of the rifle becoming familiar, almost rhythmic. "Good," Neshoba said, and she heard genuine pride in his voice. Now the pistol. The handgun was harder, lighter, more prone to her nervous trembling. But he was patient, adjusting her grip, showing her how to use both hands, teaching her to aim for center mass. "In a real fight, you won't have time to be careful," he told her. "You'll be afraid. Your hands will shake. Your heart will pound. So we practice until your body remembers what your mind might forget." They practiced for hours, until her arms ached and her ears rang, despite the cloth he'd given her to muffle the sound. And when she finally hit 3 targets in a row with the pistol, he smiled, a real smile, not just a ghost of one, and said, "You're no longer helpless, Clara Whitmore. Remember that." That night, as they sat on the porch, watching the stars emerge, Clara worked up the courage to ask about the scar that ran along his ribs. She'd seen it when he'd pulled his shirt off to wash at the creek. "Cavalry saber," he said simply. "During the wars, I was 23, angry, convinced that fighting would save my people." He was quiet for a moment. "I learned that some battles can't be won with weapons. Some require surrender, not of dignity, but of hate." "Do you regret it? The fighting?" "I regret the hate. The fighting was necessary. We were protecting our families, our land. But the hate..." He shook his head. "Hate is a poison that kills the vessel that carries it. My wife, Ayasha, taught me that. She saw past my anger to the man I could become. She saved me, in her way." "Tell me about her," Claire said softly, and he did. He told her about Ayasha's laugh, bright as creek water over stones, about her skill with herbs and healing, about how she died holding his hand, making him promise to keep living, to keep the ranch alive, to not let grief turn him back into the angry warrior he'd been. "I've kept that promise," he said, "but it's been a lonely 10 years. I thought I'd gotten used to it. And then you arrived, and..." He looked at her directly, "And I remembered that there's a difference between surviving and living." Clara's heart hammered against her ribs. Neshoba! You don't have to say anything, he interrupted gently. I'm not asking for anything. I'm just speaking truth. It's what we do best, you and I. We speak truth when the world is full of pretty lies. She reached across the space between their chairs and took his hand. Work-roughened, scarred, capable of such gentleness. Then here's my truth. I came here broken, running, convinced I'd never trust anyone again. And every day, you show me what respect looks like, what partnership looks like, what it means to be seen as a person, not property. And I'm terrified, because I'm falling in love with you, and I don't know if that's real or just gratitude, or trauma, or... He turned to face her fully, his other hand cupping her cheek. Go slow. Ishkane, we have time. You're still healing. I won't rush you toward anything you're not ready for. But what if I'm ready now? Then we'll know tomorrow, and the day after, and the day after that. His thumb traced her cheekbone with heartbreaking tenderness. I'll die before I hurt you, Clara. So we move at the pace that keeps you safe, even if that means protecting you from your own gratitude masquerading as love. She wanted to argue, to insist she knew her own heart, but the wisdom in his words, the patient respect in them, only made her more certain. Will you teach me more? She asked instead. About your language, your ways, this land? Every day, he promised. For as long as you want to learn. Autumn came to the desert in a cascade of gold and crimson, the cottonwoods along the creek turning brilliant yellow against the endless blue sky. Clara had been at the ranch for 2 months, and her transformation was complete. Her hands were calloused now, strong. Her skin had darkened from the sun, and the haunted look had left her eyes, replaced by something fierce and alive. She could ride as well as any cowboy, shoot accurately at 50 yards, track game through the scrubland, and speak enough Apache to understand when Neshoba's friends from the nearby settlement came to trade. She'd learned to make fry bread and roast mezcal, to tan hides and preserve meat for winter. But more than skills, she'd learned who she was when she wasn't running, wasn't afraid, wasn't trying to please anyone but herself. And she'd fallen completely, irrevocably in love with Neshoba Yazi. It wasn't dramatic or sudden. It was in the small things, the way he always made sure she ate first, the way he listened when she spoke, as if her words were sacred text, the way he taught her with patience and celebrated her victories with quiet pride, the way he never touched her without permission, but made sure she knew she was wanted, the way he respected her boundaries, while making it clear that when she was ready, he would be there. She saw it in his eyes too, the way he watched her when he thought she wasn't looking, the way his breath caught when she laughed, the way his hands clenched when she came close. They were circling each other like cautious animals, both wanting, both afraid. The dam finally broke on a cold October evening when Clara was in the barn tending to Sage. The mare had developed a limp, and Clara was checking her hoof when she heard horses approaching fast, too fast. Neshoba was at the creek, repairing the irrigation gate. Clara grabbed the rifle he'd taught her to keep close and moved to the barn door. 3 men rode into the yard, and her blood turned to ice. The one in front was Rex Granger, her intended, the monster her father had promised her to. He was in his 50s, thick-bodied and cruel-eyed, with a reputation for violence that extended across 2 territories. Well, well, Granger said, dismounting. Little Clara Whitmore, your daddy's been real worried about you, girl. Real worried. Put out a $500 reward for information on your whereabouts. Clara raised the rifle, her hands steady despite her thundering heart. "Leave. Now." Granger laughed. "That's cute. You think you're gonna shoot me? You're coming home, Clara. You're my property by contract, and I aim to collect what I paid for. I'm no one's property. See, that's where you're wrong." He took a step forward. "Your daddy took my money. That makes you mine until death do us part. Now put down the gun before someone gets hurt." "The lady told you to leave." Neshoba's voice cut through the tension like a blade. He emerged from the barn's shadow, his own rifle trained on Granger's men. "You're trespassing on Apache land, and you're threatening a woman under my protection." Granger's eyes narrowed. "So this is where you've been hiding, shacking up with some redskin. Your daddy's gonna love hearing about that." "My father sold me like cattle," Clara said, her voice hard as stone. "I owe him nothing. And you're right about one thing, Mr. Granger. Someone is going to get hurt if you don't ride out of here right now." "That a threat, girl?" "It's a promise." She adjusted her aim to his center mass, exactly as Neshoba had taught her. "I've gotten real good with this rifle. Want to test me?" The two men with Granger shifted nervously in their saddles, clearly not eager to die for their boss's wounded pride. But Granger was too arrogant to back down. "You're going to shoot me in cold blood? You don't have the spine." "Try me." The standoff might have ended in bloodshed if Neshoba hadn't spoken again, his voice carrying absolute authority. "Granger, you're a big man in Tucson, I know. You've got money, influence. But out here, you're nothing. You're on my land, threatening my woman, and I'm one of 300 Apache warriors who remember what it's like to protect what's ours. You kill me, my people will hunt you and everyone you love. You kill Clara, I'll make sure you beg for death long before it comes." Something in his tone, ancient and utterly uncompromising, made Granger pause. "Furthermore," Neshoba continued, "Clara isn't your property. Your contract was with her father, not her. She's an adult woman who refused your suit. Any judge in this territory would uphold her right to choose. So you can leave now with your pride dented, or you can stay and discover what happens when you threaten an Apache woman on Apache land." Clara felt warmth flood through her at those words, Apache woman. He was claiming her, protecting her, but in a way that honored her choice. Granger's face flushed red with rage, but he was a bully, and bullies only fought when they had the advantage. "This isn't over." "Yes," Clara said clearly, "it is. If you or anyone you send comes near me again, I will shoot first and bury the body where no one will ever find it. And Neshoba will help me. Won't you, Shidai?" She'd used the Apache word for my beloved, and she saw Neshoba's eyes widen slightly even as he nodded. "Together," he confirmed. "Always together." Granger jerked his horse's reins hard enough to make the animal squeal, then spurred away with his men following. They didn't look back. Clara didn't lower the rifle until they were out of sight. Then her hands started shaking so badly she almost dropped it. Neshoba was there in an instant, taking the gun, pulling her against his chest. "You were magnificent," he said into her hair. "Fierce and strong, and exactly who you were meant to be." I was terrified. Courage isn't the absence of fear, Ishkene. It's acting despite it. And you. He pulled back to look at her, his hands framing her face. "You stood your ground. You protected yourself. I've never been more proud, or more terrified, or more in love." Clara's breath caught. "What did you say?" "I love you." The words were simple, direct, Absolutely certain. I've been falling in love with you since the moment you refused to trade your mother's ring for survival. Since you chose dignity over desperation, I've tried to be patient, to give you time. But Clara, I love you with everything I am, and I want you to stay. Not as my worker, not as someone under my protection, as my wife, my partner, my Ishkane. Tears spilled down Clara's cheeks. I love you too. I think I have for weeks, but I was afraid it was just gratitude or fear of being alone or... And now? Now I know it's real. Because you gave me the tools to save myself, and I'm choosing to share that strength with you. I'm choosing you, Neshoba. Not because I need you to survive, but because I want you in my life. Because together is better than alone. He kissed her then, finally, after 2 months of restraint. And it was everything Clara had imagined, and nothing she could have prepared for. His lips were soft, but his hands were sure, holding her like she was precious, but not fragile. Like she was a partner in this, rather than something to be conquered. Go slow, she whispered when they broke apart. It's all new, and I'll die before I hurt you, he promised. We'll move at your pace, Ishkane, always. They were married a week later, in a ceremony that blended Apache tradition with frontier practicality. Neshoba's friends came from the settlement, 30 people, who brought food and gifts and blessings in both English and Apache. Clara wore a simple dress she'd made herself from cloth traded at the post, dyed with native plants to a soft shade of sage green. The ceremony was held at sunset on the ridge overlooking the ranch, with the desert spread out below them in all its harsh beauty. An elder named Bidziel spoke blessings over them, and Neshoba gave Clara a bracelet he'd made from silver and turquoise, the stones matching her eyes. He said. Clara gave him a promise. I choose you today and every day, not because I have to, but because I want to. You've taught me that love isn't ownership or obligation. It's partnership. It's respect. It's choosing each other even when the world gives us reasons to choose differently. I am yours because I choose to be, and you are mine because you've given yourself freely. Together. Together, Neshoba echoed, and there were tears in his ancient eyes. They spent their wedding night in the adobe house, with candles casting golden light on the walls, and the sound of celebration echoing from the yard, where their friends had decided to stay and feast. Neshoba was patient and gentle, letting Clara set the pace, and when she finally whispered, "I'm ready," he loved her with a reverence that made her understand why they'd waited. This wasn't desperation or survival. This was choice. This was partnership. This was love, built on respect and trust. And 2 months of learning each other's souls before they shared their bodies. Afterward, wrapped in each other's arms, Neshoba traced the line of her shoulder with gentle fingers. You asked me once if I regretted the fighting, he said quietly. I told you I regretted the hate, but there's something I didn't tell you. What's that? I regretted surviving when Ayasha died. For 10 years, I wished I'd gone with her. But if I had, I wouldn't have been here when you stumbled into that trading post. I wouldn't have been able to offer you water and hope. And I wouldn't be here now, holding the woman who taught me that second chances are real. Clara pressed her face against his chest, feeling his heartbeat steady and strong. You didn't save me, Neshoba. You gave me the tools to save myself. That's the greatest gift anyone has ever given me. Then we saved each other, he said, because you gave me something I'd forgotten, a reason to look forward instead of back. Together, Clara whispered. Together, he agreed, always. Epilogue, 3 years later. Clara Yazzie stood on the porch of the ranch house, watching her husband gentle a young colt in the corral. Her hand rested on her swollen belly, their first child, due in 2 months. Behind her, the house had expanded. A new room for the baby, a proper workshop for Nashoba's silverwork, a larger kitchen where Clara taught other women from the settlement how to blend frontier cooking with Apache traditions. The ranch had grown too. They had 50 horses now, and their reputation for fair dealing had brought business from 3 territories. Clara handled the books and negotiations with a sharp mind that commanded respect. And Nashoba trained the horses with the same patient skill he'd used to teach her. They'd faced challenges, a drought, a raid by outlaws that they'd fought off together, the lingering prejudice of some whites who didn't approve of their marriage. But they'd faced everything side by side. 2 people who'd found strength in partnership rather than dominance. Sometimes Clara thought about Rex Granger and her father, wondered if they'd ever found peace. But mostly, she thought about the future, about teaching her daughter, she was certain it was a girl, everything Nashoba had taught her, about building a legacy of respect and partnership that would outlast them both. "What are you thinking about, Shidai?" Nashoba called from the corral, his silver-streaked hair catching the afternoon light. "About how far we've come," Clara called back. "About how grateful I am that you offered me water instead of taking my gold." He smiled, that full, genuine smile she'd learned to treasure. "Gold isn't what sustains life in the desert, Ishkene. Love is, partnership is, respect is." He finished with the colt and walked toward her, his hand reaching for hers. "You're everything that sustains me." She pulled him down for a kiss, feeling their child move between them, a third heartbeat joining their two. "Together," she whispered. "Together," he agreed. "Always." And as the sun set over their land built on partnership and choice and love that had been earned rather than demanded, Clara knew she'd finally found what she'd been running toward all along, a place where she wasn't property or possession, but a person, powerful, essential, free. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I'd love to know where you're enjoying this tale from. Are you listening at home, during your commute, or perhaps while working? Please subscribe to the From Wild West channel and share your thoughts in the comments below. What did you think of Clara and Nashoba's journey? Your feedback means the world to us.